Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I'm Marc Givler, joined as always by Chip Minnich. We are in our last few teams here on our Big Ten previews, 2025 schedule breakdowns. We are on to USC. This is going to be, again, there's been a lot of teams we've covered that there's maybe a narrow disparity. Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. A lot of these teams, within a game or two, we can kind of predict about what their record's going to be. I think USC is a total wild card this year in the Big Ten. I think this is a team that could surprise and do very well, or could kind of flop under the weight of the expectations and pressure under Lincoln Riley right now to start winning more in LA. So it's a program, not a program, but a coach I've been critical of over the past year. So I'm actually very eager to dive into this one and kind of address their schedule from all the different angles. Chip, just your thoughts on USC this year in the sense of it. I know the buyout number is still insane and probably too much that they could really do anything with, but Lincoln Riley has to start winning, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, Mark, you hit it right on the head that the contract buyout is prohibitive for USC, but stranger things have happened. And that's a program that is not accustomed to, nor should they feel accustomed to being mediocre. And I'm just going to say that USC right now, the way that they are on the recruiting side of things, going into next year, they're acting as though, all right, we're going to be a force to be reckoned with. But probably better than anybody, I mean, the recruiting can fall apart as soon as the losses start happening and the job security questions start becoming more and more loud. So it's going to be interesting to see how Lincoln Riley and his staff and his team do in 2025, because it can have a tremendous impact on 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, I think this is the year that defines his tenure, to be honest with you, because they are very much tracking as a team that could land the number one recruiting class this year. If they go out there this year and they even at a 9-3, I think if they have like three good competitive losses to like top type teams, but like 9-3 or better this year, and I think that can snowball on itself in a good way. With the recruiting class, they can keep the recruiting class together. Maybe the job security stuff goes away a little bit, and things can get back moving in the right direction. If they go 7-5 or worse, something like that, the is Lincoln Riley the man for the job narrative is going to continue. I would argue the recruiting class has a chance to maybe stumble a bit down the stretch at that record with those questions swirling, and it did last year too. It didn't come unraveled, but like they lost some guys down the stretch last year that they had committed. And so I think this is the defining year of Lincoln Riley's tenure. I think this is the sink or swim year. No one thought A&M would buy out Jimbo Fisher. They did. Like USC, LA, a lot of money out there. If this goes sideways this year, I do think they will find a way to come up with that money and make a change. But again, if he can win 9 or even 10 games this year, I think the narrative changes and things get moving in a really good direction for them. So a huge year, no question. Let's look at the schedule. I'll read this for everybody. I know you guys who are watching us on YouTube can read, but there's people who are listening who may not, who may not have the schedule in front of them and would like it read. So USC's football schedule this year in 2025: home Missouri State, home Georgia Southern, at Purdue, home Michigan State, at Illinois, bye week, home Michigan, at Notre Dame, bye week, at Nebraska, home Northwestern, home Iowa, at Oregon, home UCLA. Chip, yes, coming out of the gates pretty soft, but boy, escalates quickly, starting with that Illinois game, week 5. Obviously, like, fast start's imperative here, of course, right, Chip? I mean, they've got to be 4-0, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like you said, Mark, it starts off soft. And I apologize to anyone from the Purdue side of things, but I'm gonna say that USC, even traveling across the country, they should be okay going to West Lafayette. Now, as an Ohio State fan, West Lafayette has been, it's been a house of horrors, exactly. But I am confident that USC can weather that. But the fact that they get Michigan State coming to LA in September, they should be 4-0. Where it gets dicey is when they go on the road to Illinois. It's a tough place to play, let alone the fact that Illinois is widely expected to be a really good team this year within the Big Ten. And then even with those bye weeks in October, I think this is where, like you said, this is where the USC season can either take off in a positive direction or possibly go south really quickly, because the fact that they're going to be welcoming in Michigan in October, I think, is a good thing, but that's going to be a physical game. Having to go on the road across the country to Notre Dame, which is a rivalry game, but Notre Dame should be good in the non-conference side of things. It doesn't hurt, but this can impact USC's Big Ten schedule tremendously. The bye week, and then having to go on the road to Nebraska for that first weekend in November. So this is where those 4 games, the Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame, Nebraska, this is where things are going to either go positively or negatively for USC, in my opinion.
Yeah, they've got 4 really challenging road games. Illinois, Notre Dame, Nebraska, Oregon. Mm-hmm. Those are 4. Those are 3 of the best environments week to week. But then that Illinois game, that's going to be a jacked up group, because Illinois, for the first time in a while, has real expectations going into the season, like legitimate playoff expectations. Like that's a schedule for Illinois that they could go 10-2 and get a wild card spot. And so part of that path to 10-2 or for Illinois would be holding serve at home against USC. So that's going to be a big game early in the Big Ten season. But yeah, I mean, you have to be 4-0, and then it's well, can you get out of there 7-1 through 8? Because if you do, you are looking at a wild card playoff spot dead in the eye at that point, and maybe better, maybe a Big Ten championship game appearance. But there's also a case of, it's not nuts to think that you'd lose 3 of those games. I mean, if you don't play well, so you could go 4-0 and be looking at 5-3 if you don't do what you need to be doing. So that is just a ridiculously critical 4-game stretch for Lincoln Riley's tenure at USC, in my opinion, let alone the 2025 season. Nebraska is going to be a madhouse in November. It's going to be cold, might be windy, might be rainy. The Illinois game, at least, is in September. That stadium is like a freaking wind tunnel, but it is early enough in the season that you would hope the conditions are probably pretty good. But then you get Oregon at the end. Even Iowa at home is going to be challenging because of the way they play, the physical nature that they play the game with. And then, of course, UCLA, we can't really write them off. Deshaun Foster's trying to build something there, and that's a rivalry game, so you never quite know. But, you figure they can win those 4 coming out of the gate. You figure they should absolutely beat Northwestern at home, and you figure they should absolutely beat UCLA. So it's the path to 6-7 wins is almost seems like a layup. And then what do you do in those other 5 games or so that's really going to define what type of team this is? If it's another struggling middle of the pack Big Ten team, or if it's a national, if it's a Big Ten championship caliber team, a college football playoff contender, whatever, what have you. But yeah, what's pick a game in there. We got that 4-game stretch in the middle: Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame, Nebraska. Which one for you is the defining game? Which one for you there is the one okay, this is the one that could dictate a lot of things?
I'm gonna go with that Michigan game, October 11th. The fact that Michigan, USC, by all accounts last year had Michigan on the ropes in Ann Arbor. I mean, they had them, and then the Michigan, to their credit, Michigan played a physical style that was enough for them to win that game in the last 30 seconds or so. And it wasn't pretty, but they did everything that they needed to do. The Wolverines needed to do to win that game. And I think that's where USC was just kind of, all right, I mentioned this earlier, like you talk about the season kind of going south real quickly. That's basically what happened to USC last year. So I'm going to point to that game is I let's say worst case scenario, USC goes on the road at the end of September, loses at Illinois, but they come home, they win that game against Michigan. It gives them a spark of confidence. Let's say that they play at Notre Dame, even if they lose, but they play much more competitively than I think people might give them credit for. That to me is the linchpin for that season. Is I think that USC needs to play well when they welcome in the Wolverines in October 11th, and play better than they did last year.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to be able to disagree with you on this, but I can't. I think it's Michigan as well for a couple reasons. And you alluded to the first one, which is they could lose that Illinois game. It wouldn't be stunning to anyone if they lost at Illinois. And so they could be sitting there at 4-1, and we really have no new information on what USC is, because we'd expect them to be exactly 4-1. If they win the games they're supposed to win and they lose the road game that they're probably going to be a small underdog in, they're 4-1. And it's like, well, what have we actually learned about USC? All we know is that they've won the games they were favored to win, and then they lost the first road game that they weren't favored to win. And so you come out of that bye week, and I think you find out about yourself with Michigan. But even if they're 5-0, like, again, how do you handle that success of winning at Illinois? Do you come back and do you get the win at home against Michigan coming off the bye, or do you kind of revert to like some of your past tendencies and just not be able to string these big wins together? And so I think it's if they beat Illinois and they're 5-0, it obviously cements them as a legitimate playoff team. And if they're 4-1 and everyone's still like, well, we don't know, we still don't know what USC is this year, that's going to tell us, I think, maybe break the tie on what they actually are. But if they're able to start 6-0, for example, they're in an amazing position to get a playoff berth. They will position themselves in such a way to give themselves a margin of error where they could lose at Notre Dame and at Oregon, finish 10-2, and still make the playoff. Like if that's their route, like if they go 10-2 with road losses to Notre Dame and Oregon, they are 1,000% in the playoffs. Like there's no chance they're not in the playoffs with that resume. So that Michigan game is huge. I agree. I like the way the schedule sets up for them with like kind of the soft opening and then ramping up in the middle, because this is a program. First, I think it's a team that needs some confidence. I don't think you want to come out of the gates with Notre Dame or Michigan. I think you've got some new pieces. You were very active in the transfer portal. Like you got guys in the transfer portal. You lost some guys in the transfer portal. You have some young recruits you like that you're going to want to get a good look at. To throw those guys in the fire early, I think would have been tough, but you get Missouri State, you get Georgia Southern, Purdue. Like you're going to get a chance to really kind of glue things together there at the beginning of the year and make yourself a much better team in October and November with that ramp up. So I like the schedule layout. So Chip, best case, worst case.
All right, here's the deal. I'm looking at this schedule, and I know that we've been talking about the Illinois game. Is just going to be, it's going to be big for both programs. I mean, I'm not backing away from that. What has me, I guess, if I was a USC fan, what has me concerned is, I mean, we've been talking about the Michigan game, going on the road to Notre Dame, which, it's a rivalry game. It's a night game in South Bend, and it doesn't impact USC in the Big Ten conference race. That's a kind of, it's going to have the eyes of the nation because it's just a historical rivalry game and it's huge. But what has me concerned, if I was a USC fan, is we talked about earlier about the Nebraska game, the fact that it's going to be in November. Nebraska should be improved. It should be, you have no idea what the weather could be like in Lincoln that first weekend in November. If USC loses Illinois, if they lose at Notre Dame and they lose to Nebraska, now we're getting into, okay, bad. This is all right. I've seen this horror movie before. I don't like it, because going on the road late November, hypothetically, Oregon just torches USC. Now you're going to be talking about that recruiting class. Do we want to really sign up for this? How secure is his job? All that. So I'm going to say worst case scenario is 6-6, that they lose all those games that I just mentioned, and the fact that, okay, they, with 6-6, like you're talking, that's a UCLA loss, because everything is kind of in they're playing like all these head games. So it's like 6-6, but I'm also with you. I think best case scenario 10-2, that they, let's say best case scenario, they go on the road, they still lose to Illinois. They still lose to Oregon, but not badly. 10-2 is, kind of, I think, like their ceiling, but like worst case scenario is 6-6. And if you're a USC fan, you're really starting to think, okay, can this guy Lincoln Riley?
Yeah, I think, look, that's a wide range, right?
I know. No, I freely admit that.
Five different possible outcomes.
Right. I freely admit that.
But we talked about that at the beginning, that this was a team that the range of outcomes isn't particularly narrow. I'm pretty much with you. I think 7-5 is like doomsday for me, just because when I look at this, man, I see 6 games where it's like, boy, that's going to be really hard to lose that. Like, I include UCLA in that. I think those first 4, the home game against Northwestern, and then like the end of, now I fully admit you've got a good point there on, if the previous few weeks have kind of made their season go south, maybe they're ripe for an upset there by UCLA at the end of the year. Maybe that they're mailing it in, but to me, 7-5 is kind of the worst case. I agree 10-2 is the best case. I don't personally think they're going to go 10-2, but I can see a path where they either start 6-0 and then it's, Notre Dame gets them and Oregon gets them, or they start 5-1 and they're able to split the Notre Dame Oregon kind of rivalry games. I would think maybe more so Notre Dame than Oregon, but you never know. That Oregon game at the end of the year could, if they go into that Oregon game, 9-1 or whatever it would be at that point, that's probably a Big Ten semifinal game at that point. So that could be a pressure cooker if they're off to a really hot start. Even if they're 8-2, and one of the losses is to Notre Dame, that could be a Big Ten semifinal game. I mean, so that could be a really big one there in November. But I'm going to say 10-2 with you on the upside. I'm going to say 7-5 on the downside. I tend to believe this is like an 8-win team. I know we do the range, but I always kind of like throw out a like, hey, this is my range, but here's where I'm kind of like, I kind of view them as like an 8-4 team this year. I think anything under 8-4, and there's going to be a lot of questions. I think 8-4 is kind of we still don't really have any answers record. And then I think anything above 8-4 is okay. Let's push forward with Lincoln Riley and what we're doing in recruiting and everything else. So, really big year for USC, for the program, for Lincoln Riley, this is one that I think's, there's so few schools in the country that their performance creates a ripple effect around college football. And USC is one of those programs, because if the USC job ever opens, it causes massive recruiting fallout across the country. It causes coaching dominoes to fall across the country. And so the status of the USC football program is one of maybe 7 or 8 other programs out there that really can create a domino effect on and off the field around college football. So this is going to be one of the most interesting teams, I think, to watch this season, not just in the Big Ten, but around college football. Chip, any parting thoughts on the Trojans or anything we've talked about?
I would just say that, we keep talking about it, that September 27th game is going to be pivotal for both programs. And, it's just one of these things where, without seeing, I'm always of the mindset that, okay, it is way too difficult. When it comes to like the preseason rankings, it's like, okay, you are going, I realize why magazines and websites do it. But until I always say, man, you need a solid month to kind of have a barometer of any team before you can say, oh yeah, like this team is exactly who we thought they were, or oh man, I was way off. My point being is that September 27th game is going to be must-see TV for Big Ten fans, regardless of where you come out on USC or Illinois, because I think that's going to be a game that's going to kind of give you an idea as to the fortunes for both teams respectively in 2025.
Yeah, that's a great point about letting like a month of the season play out before you start really drawing conclusions. But that's not going to stop us from week 1 and week 2 overreaction shows. So
that's right.
We're going to be massive hypocrites, and we are going to overreact to week 1 and week 2 on this very show. So
exactly.
Look forward to that. But it's a good point. We'll know. We will not truly know. I don't think we'll truly know what USC really is until the middle of the season. So, be fun to watch. We're getting there. Big Ten Media Days are on Tuesday. We're so close. Yeah. We're recording this on Sunday afternoon. We are 48 hours to almost to the hour. Really, we're close. We're like 48 hours away from the kickoff of Big Ten Media Days, and then fall camps. I'll be at an Ohio State practice.
There you go.
Not this Thursday, but next Thursday.
It's getting there. It's getting there.
So looking forward to finishing up. We've got 3 more left, so stay tuned for those. But thanks everyone again for watching and listening, and we'll be back here again with another one soon.